My name is Avra, A-V-R-A, last name Jain, J-A-I-N, born in Sacramento, California. Founding member of the Vagabond group. A lot of factors come into deciding, what I think is the next best thing, I guess. First, I listen. I listen to the market. We use the phrase a lot, boots on the ground. I spend a lot of time in the marketplace talking to users, potential tenants, finding out what their needs are, if they're going to be displaced, like let's just say they're being pushed out of Design District or Wynwood or somewhere, finding out where they would like to be next, what they're looking for. And so trying to address what I perceive as a need and a want in the marketplace, and combine that with my sort of own intuition and ideas as to, what would be a sort of a creatively interesting as a solution for them, and creatively interesting for me as a developer. I think other people probably would look to see what I'm doing and maybe say, okay, and it's not because so much for what I'm doing or whether that's a stamp of approval, but I think they know that if I'm going to go into a neighborhood, that I am going to affect change. So, because I'm a developer, I'm a doer. I mean, there are people that buy land and speculate, but they buy and they hold. If you were trying to find leading indicators in the market, you would try to follow people that are going to make the investments and are going to make the change because you've seen them do it before and you sort of like the style in which they do it. People would say that the Vagabond was certainly a tipping point for Biscayne Boulevard, but I followed other people's good work here. There were people that spent years creating this historic district, the MiMo district, which stands for, Miami Mid-Century Modern. So people like Terry D'Amico and Alan Randall and other preservationists like Nancy Liebman, I think George Neary was involved. These are the people that them and a team that they work with spent the time to get the designation done for this neighborhood. That was critical because I wouldn't be here if that designation wasn't done. So because of their work, I then said, okay, I like the fact that they were setting a standard for how developers could behave within a new neighborhood. So I liked that, there was going to be a preservation board and a preservation officer overlooking new developments on the block. That ensured some sort of a standard that was, I think, a benefit to the property owners. I almost always have partners. Yeah, so it can be one or it can be a group. But they're usually, depending on the project that I'm doing, they'd be like-minded people, somebody that sort of share in the vision. With Biscayne Boulevard, it was very difficult to sort of spreadsheet the project. I could not get my traditional real estate investors to would take on what they perceived as a big risk. Of course now, everybody wants to do Biscayne Boulevard, but back at the time, people perceived a lot of risk. A lot of it had to do with the type of businesses that were going on here. And I think people kind of had their blinders on and would just shoot through Biscayne Boulevard and didn't really stop to take a look. So with regards to Biscayne Boulevard, it was family and friends, a lot of my own money, people that have trusted me in similar situations, even going back to some of the developments that I did in New York City. And I couldn't make promises, I couldn't do a typical real estate analysis, but I felt pretty strongly that I had a vision. I felt pretty strongly about it, and I was fortunate that they were willing to sort of trust me with that. People find me. It's not like I'm out there soliciting. So the investors that I have some of them I've had for over 20 years. And then lots of times they will bring in, partners of theirs, or people will seek me out if they're interested in sort of the product or the space that I'm in. And sometimes they're seeking me out for information or some ideas, and then sometimes that leads into, joint ventures or investors. The more residential there is, the more influx of people, the more need for commercial, for services, for business. So I think Miami was underserviced commercially and retail-wise, and I think that the market is trying to, I think the market's addressing that. In inflationary times, real estate has typically been a good investment. So that's sort of counterintuitive, because during inflationary times, interest rates go up, but also during inflationary times, real estate goes up. So, so historics are always good reference, though they don't always hold true. Just because something happened in the last cycle doesn't mean it necessarily happens in this cycle. So I look, which is why you constantly want to be evaluating, taking, I think, I don't say, oh, well, real estate went up 20% last year, so it's going to go up 20% next year. I mean, how do you know? Yeah. So I think the way to sort of prevent sort of being caught up in what I call the price action is to stay true to the fundamentals. Is there demand? What are the rental rates? Those are the things that I look for. I'm always looking at the fundamentals. I think that is the best hedge against cycles. The other thing is to buy, I tend to buy what I call bullseye properties. Instead of going further west or into locations that are considered fringe locations, though some people think I'm fringe, I'm not really that fringe. But rather than go to further out locations, some people will say, oh, well, it's so much cheaper out there, I'll buy it there. Well, there's also a lot more risk associated with that. So I tend to stay what I call within more bullseye neighborhoods.